The changes of the landscape down there have been incredible.
Transformation is just unbelievable.
To see trees that I'm standing against now this high and have this shelter is just phenomenal. It's exciting.
35 kilometres north of Bendigo in central Victoria is the agricultural community of Kamarooka. Here, a small number of families run large cropping and sheep farms. The area has historically been reliable for agriculture, but one of the significant threats to farming in the area comes from salinity. The Kamarooka catchment covers 2,500 hectares and stores large quantities of salt. Salinity first appeared on Kamarooka's agricultural land in the mid-1950s, but 20 years later more than 1,000 hectares was salt affected. This land lay bare for 50 years until 2004, when a local community group worked together to demonstrate how this land could be returned to productive use. In just over 2 years, a salt wasteland has been remarkably transformed. This is the story of Northern United Forestry Group's Kamarooka project.
The group was formed in 1998 with 8 foundation members. 10 years on now, we've got 45 family members.
The Northern United Forestry Group, NUFG, is a group of people who share an interest in growing native trees primarily for saw logs and firewood. The aim of the group is to develop farm forestry in a region where the annual rainfall is less than 450 millimetres and provide forest products, environmental services and community benefits. In 2004, the group won the National Landcare Research Award for its contribution to low rainfall farm forestry. NUFG is a diverse group that includes a couple who run a nursery, a cropping and sheep farmer, an export hay producer, a chicken farmer, a sawmiller and even a hydrogeologist. The group also fulfills an important social role in the community and takes its name from the local football team that folded in the mid-1990s. In 2004, the National Landcare Program funded the group to set up a demonstration project to reclaim 40 hectares of salt-affected land on the Hay family farm at Kamarooka.
Well, we got involved when Northern United Forestry Group was looking for land to run this project on, and the boys, 3 sons, own this part of the land, and they agreed to let Northern United Forestry start this project up.
Over the entire area of the area that we've treated, I suppose, there wasn't much of it that wasn't affected by salt and severely affected by salt. And look, we're dealing with a groundwater system here that is 3/4 of the salinity of seawater, and it sits within a metre of the surface normally.
The paddock we're standing in now, where the salt bush is, was very prone to salt starting back in around about mid-1950s when this was cropped, and it was a very wet winter and parts of it just didn't come up. And later on it was found out it was because of the salinity, and from then on this land wasn't able to be cropped because it just became progressively worse and worse. In wet winters this would be just all water because the water table would be so high you wouldn't be able to walk or drive on this part of the land.
The first step was to complete a geophysical survey and produce a map of the degree of salting across the project site. The plan was to match the salt tolerance of the plantings to the salinity of the soil. Next came soil preparation, where the experience of NUFG members proved invaluable.
The main establishment techniques is to do soil preparation in the autumn, and that means that we use 3 tine rippers because you get a multiple shattering effect on some of this ground. After you use a multiple ripper, you can then add, we'd like to add gypsum at a reasonable rate, something like a cubic metre per every 200 metres. You can add organic matter. And I'm talking in soils too that are a little bit degraded like that is, because the more preparation we do, the better the result of the establishment. After we leave it through the winter, and you generally get rainfall which softens and mixes that soil and makes weeds grow in the spring, then we will do some rotu hoeing. Even through the winter you can, depending on the conditions. If you've had rain and the conditions are right, you can rotu hoe it up. At least once. You might have to do it again a couple of times. But come late September, you sum up the situation, you get into October, and it's the time for planting then. And so the rotu hoeing, the final rotu hoeing, should leave the soil bed in a condition as good as if you were growing tomatoes in your garden.
In the first year, the group planted 11,000 trees, 10,000 saltbush plugs, 6 hectares of direct seeded saltbush and native grasses, and 5 kilometres of direct seeded trees across 32 hectares.
Species we've worked with have been sugar gum, swamp yate, and several different sorts of acacia. The growth rates have been very, very good. We've been very pleased with the outcome, particularly the swamp yate and the sugar gum. So the species selected have been very well chosen by the people who did it and have performed remarkably well.
We're very fortunate when we planted this saltbush and the trees that just 10 days or 8 days after it was sown, we had 40 mils of rain, and I think we had approximately 90% establishment on the saltbush. Had it happened this year with no rain, we probably would have been a fail, but the gods must have looked down on us the day we were planting, and nearly every tree we planted grew in every saltbush, so we're very fortunate that way.
Monitoring is a very important part of the Kamarooka project. This includes measuring changes in groundwater, learning about the impacts of grazing, and documenting changes in the vegetation. It's revealed some important findings.
It's a fairly intense project given the size of the area we're dealing with. So in a 40 hectare site we have 13 monitoring bores, and 10 of those bores are actually set up with electronic data loggers, and the monitoring has been set up so that it not only tells us what's happening across the whole of the areas, but it also is telling us what's happening under each of the treatments. That is, what's happening under the trees, what's happening under the saltbush, what's happening under the native vegetation. And really that level of intensity of monitoring together with electronic monitoring is something that's pretty special. I don't know of any other areas that are as well monitored in Australia as what we have here. One of the challenges that we've had is the water tables have been falling away over the last 2 or 3 years. The challenge for us though is that the water tables are actually falling away in part due to the dry conditions established by the 10-year drought that we find ourselves within, and in part, we believe, because of the treatments that we've actually put in place. So one of the challenges for us is to try and sort out what we can attribute to the trees, what we can attribute to the saltbush, and what we attribute to the drought. Where we decided to extend our monitoring into the native vegetation, the remnant vegetation at both the northern end and the southern end of the site, where we have 200-300-year-old box trees, really just to see why those trees were in fact surviving under very shallow water tables with very saline groundwater. And what we found in the northern end in particular was remarkable. We found that the water tables there were 5 to 6 metres lower than what they were in adjacent areas that had high water tables and salinity problems. And I guess that sent us down a path of trying to figure out why. And it's pretty clear to us that remarkably these trees are transpiring some of this very saline groundwater, and they are maintaining water tables at reasonable depth. And to a large extent that rewrites some of the science that we've done in the last 10 or 20 years. We have to look at these things again. But it doesn't stop there. We've actually got sugar gums and occidentalis, flat top yate, and a range of other trees out there that are growing on a water table that's only 1.5 to 2 metres deep. And in the middle of this amazing drought that we're in, those trees have just never looked back. They've never looked healthier. Well, growing in that saline environment, you would expect that they might not be doing as well as they are.